The Circular Economy of Rags, Li Lu's Early Years and the Compounding of Human Capital. Part 1. The Kindergarten of the Cultural Revolution. The late 1960s in China. The Cultural Revolution is in full swing. Chairman Mao has unleashed a movement to purge bourgeois elements from society, resulting in the breakdown of families, schools, and government. Intellectuals are being persecuted, and children are often left to fend for themselves while their parents are sent to labor camps or re-education centers. Li Lu is in Tangshan, an industrial coal mining city in Hebei province. He is living in a boarding school that reflects the chaos of the outside world, a place where resources are scarce, supervision is negligent, and the strong prey on the weak without consequence. This is not a normal childhood, it is a vacuum of care. Okay, let's get started with Chapter 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. From left to right, from right to left. It was always 8. I lay on the bed and looked up at the wooden beams of the roof, counting. The last 3-year-old besides myself was crying in the big room of the kindergarten, a boarding school for preschoolers, but soon even he would go, and I would be left all alone to count to 8, from left to right, from right to left. The teacher would stop cursing as soon as the last parents came, full of apologies, the child's crying ceasing with their hugs. And then the door would close, the lock click, and it would be quiet. We begin in total isolation. In a normal society, a child is the center of a family. Here, Li Lu is a remnant, left behind because his parents, intellectuals, are likely under political pressure or absent. The counting of the beams is a coping mechanism. In a world where he has no control over his safety or his loneliness, he imposes order the only way he can, by counting the cage. Back to the book. I turned my eyes to the window to see the sunset, briefly beautiful, then dim. I knew the light would disappear. I knew the dark would come. I knew there would always be 8 wooden beams. Then the lizards came out. All over the floor and on the beams of the roof, I heard the sounds. I didn't hear them when all the children were there on weekdays, but when everyone was gone, the noises began. Ghosts walking, I thought, and the lizards, frightening with their horrible poison, began to scuttle about. I felt the darkness press upon me while the sound of the lizards grew louder. I held my breath, then, exhausted, fell asleep. On Sunday morning the darkness was gone, the lizards were gone, everything seemed normal again. And again I counted the wooden beams. Then the hunger. I even dreamt of eating lizard meat. The smell of cooked lizard became almost tangible, but the only thing I could do was drink water to fill my stomach so full it hurt, and made me briefly forget my hunger. Even stomachache was better than that. Pause. Did you catch that? Hunger isn't just background misery here. It actively rewires his mental map of the world. The lizard has been coded as poison, death, terror. But scarcity forces a reclassification. If it's edible, it's no longer a monster. The dream of cooked lizard meat is the mind quietly demoting fear in favor of survival. This is not courage, it's necessity doing the thinking for him. The key line is choosing stomach pain over hunger. That's a primitive cost-benefit calculation. Pain is temporary, starvation is existential. A 3-year-old is already learning to optimize under constraint. This is how the era imprints itself, not through slogans, but through forced trade-offs that teach you what actually matters. Psychologically, this is the birth of a pattern you'll see again and again later. When reality contradicts the official story, lizards are deadly, hunger says otherwise. He doesn't cling to belief. He adapts. Fear becomes negotiable. Rules become conditional. The world stops being moral and starts being empirical. Back to the book. Then I started to play. When everybody was there was little play. I was the very lowest in my kindergarten, the most outcast of all. I could never behave freely. I would be punished and cursed at by the first official of my class, and all the other officials would follow his lead, heaping abuse on me. Only on Sunday could I play freely. I jumped from one bed to another. I went round on all the 50 beds in the big room. And on the first official's bed, I jumped up and down as hard as I could, hoping it would collapse. But I was too little. I was only 3. Nothing changed. His quilt was special, covered with silk. Sometimes I just sat on the quilt and stroked it. So smooth. It was much better than mine, which was only right as everybody was better than me. But on Sunday, All the beds, all the quilts, belonged to me. Later, the door would open. The others had come back and would show off the goodies they had brought from home. They talked about the movies they had seen or the stories they had heard from their parents. Then we would see who had the most things. Whoever brought the most and talked the most was of course the best. My class had a first official, a second official, and a third official. They were not chosen by the teacher. The qualifications were bringing the most things back from home, having a better and more comfortable life, being the best fighter. The first official was the king. If you didn't obey him, he beat you up. That was the order of things in the kindergarten. Pause. What's happening here is not play in the normal sense. It's temporary sovereignty. When everyone is present, Lilu has no body autonomy, no speech autonomy, no emotional autonomy. His movements are policed by the officials. Play requires safety. Hierarchy kills it. Sunday removes witnesses and enforcers, so play suddenly becomes possible, not because conditions improved, but because power briefly vanished. Jumping from bed to bed is not random joy. It's a full audit of territory. 50 beds, all claimed, all ranked, all unequal during the week. Now temporarily neutral. This is what dispossessed people do the moment authority leaves. They traverse space that's usually forbidden. The hope that the king's bed will collapse is pure, undeveloped revolutionary instinct. If the symbol breaks, the system might fall with it. It doesn't, but the instinct is there. The silk quilt matters more than the beating. He doesn't steal it, damage it, or defile it. He touches it. That's not envy. It's sensory exposure to inequality. He learns class difference not as an abstract idea, but as texture, smooth versus rough, warm versus thin. This is how hierarchy actually embeds itself, not through ideology, but through the body noticing contrast. The line, which was only right as everybody was better than me, is devastating. That's internalized caste logic at age 3. No one has to explain inferiority once material differences repeat often enough. By Sunday night, the system reinstates itself through ritualized display. Goods, stories, movies, parents. Cultural capital plus material capital equals legitimacy. The children reenact adult society perfectly without instruction. Back to the book. They called me Dry Shrimp Eye because I was scrawny but had a big face with small eyes. I wore the same jacket and army green trousers all year round. My clothes were covered with holes and patches. My nose ran and I was always dirty. Naturally, I was at the bottom of the class. At first, I tried to compete with them. Once, when the teacher gave me 2 rice cakes, I didn't eat them. I was hungry all night and all Sunday because I wanted to compete with the cakes on Sunday night. But after the display, the first official simply took the cakes. He offered some to other children and ate the rest. He always bullied me and others who were small. He was fat, but his face was fair, so we called him Whiteface. In Chinese opera, characters with white faces are bad. Whiteface somehow learned that my parents were people with problems, so he taunted me. Your father's a spy and your mother's a landlord's daughter, and you're nothing but a bastard. He started the children chanting, "Bastard, bastard, nobody picks you up. Bastard, bastard, nobody picks you up." On Sunday night, he demanded any cake I had left. But now I ate the cakes before they came back. I ate 1 cake on Saturday and 1 on Sunday, but I was always unbearably hungry. Pause. Here we see the political stigma filtering down to children. The taunt, "Your father's a spy and your mother's a landlord's daughter," is a specific political accusation. In the Cultural Revolution, having a bad background, landlord, intellectual rightist, made you a subhuman class enemy. Whiteface uses this political weapon to justify his theft. Lilu learns a hard lesson about property rights. If you are weak, you cannot save for the future. You must consume what you have immediately, or it will be expropriated. This is where deprivation hardens into strategy. The nickname, the patched clothes, the dirt, all become visible proof of inferiority, until the hierarchy feels natural. Saving the rice cakes is a child's belief in a future. Having them seized teaches him that delayed reward only works if you have power. Whiteface's political taunts import adult ideology into the playground, turning theft into justice and cruelty into righteousness. Eating the cakes early is not weakness, it's adaptation. When the weak cannot protect property, the rational move is to consume immediately. Now, back to the book. Kindergarten was like a prison. Every morning from Monday to Saturday we got up, dressed quickly, and washed. Then the whistle blew and we lined up to go to the dining room across a narrow yard in another building. There we sat at long tables with our hands behind our backs. The teacher made a speech. The big ones, who were 6 or 7, would recite some of Mao's quotations. If you didn't do it well, you got into trouble. In the middle class, we repeated the quotations after the teacher. The little ones didn't have to do anything. After breakfast, we went to the playground to do whatever we liked. Sometimes the teacher would give a signal and we had to run to a square wooden fort. The game was to see who could climb the bars to the top of the fort, only you had to be sure to let the first official get to the top first. If anyone else got there first, he would regret it when the teacher was gone, which was most of the time the teachers slept or did their errands. The one who got to the top first would be given a sweet. 3 afternoons a week we had to clean the school. This was considered a proletarian collective activity. After the cleaning, some would be praised, some criticized. Nobody really cared though if the place was clean. We did it mainly so that the teacher could find someone to criticize. The first official was put in charge. Teacher Yan came out now and then to check on us. Monkey, the second official and a sly weakling, flattered the first official, who would take his side. Monkey always bullied Blockhead and Blue Robe, but a few times Teacher Yan caught him idling and told him to pick up all the leaves in the schoolyard himself. We were glad because we did not have to do any more work ourselves, but Monkey took his revenge on those who sneered. The teacher asked Whiteface who did well and who didn't. Monkey would tell Whiteface to report Blue Robe when the teacher asked who was responsible for not picking up a leaf. Sometimes Monkey deliberately threw a leaf on the ground and accused Blue Robe of negligence. Then Blue Robe would say it was not him. Teacher Yan hated people to cross her, so she hit Blue Robe. Whiteface had some power, but Teacher Yan was the real authority, so I knew it was important to be the authority. Teacher Yan controlled the children by making them hate each other, by encouraging factions. That was what you could do when you had authority. The teachers beat the children with whatever was at hand, a fly swat or a stick. Teacher Yan used a bamboo switch. At meals, we had to sit still while the teacher put the food in our bowls. If you ate too fast, you would be hit. If you went on eating fast, you would have to stand and watch the others eat. But you couldn't dawdle either. And you had to eat everything. Once Teacher Yan put a piece of fatty skin with a lot of hair on it in my bowl. I had always hated fat. It made me want to vomit. The way I dealt with fat was first to put it in my mouth. When I saw Yan turn away from me, I would swallow it whole. I always felt sick afterwards. Once I swallowed the fat too fast and it made me cough. I coughed out the fat and it splattered on the table. Yan pulled my ear and made me stand up. She said to everyone, "Look, he is still a boy, but already he has such serious bourgeois behavior. The peasants work to raise us. Chairman Mao and the party give us good food and clothes. But you don't value all this. You don't even want to eat meat. How you waste things. You were trying to play tricks, but you can never deceive me. I will find out sooner or later. You are sure to become a class enemy." I was scared to death. The other children stopped eating and stared until the teacher waved her bamboo switch and told them to hurry up and eat. I was left standing. "You don't want to eat meat," she said to me. "Now you'd better not eat anything." She didn't let me finish my food, but she insisted I eat the piece of fat. From then on, I had a great fear of fat, of the meals, of the dining room, of the teacher and her switch. Later I found ways to revenge myself on Yan. When she was not there, I broke her switch in two so she could only hit us with her hand. That wasn't so bad. But the fat was awful. Whenever there was fat in my bowl, I hid it in my pocket. My pocket was always very dirty. Pause. Teacher Yan is a classic example of an authoritarian using ideology to mask cruelty. By calling the child's refusal to eat fat bourgeois behavior, she turns a physical reaction into a political crime. This was common in the era. Every action, no matter how small, could be analyzed for revolutionary purity. Li Lu's resistance is small but significant. He hides the fat in his pocket. It is his first act of subversion. This section shows how total control is taught as routine. The whistle, the lines, the recited quotations, obedience is trained before understanding. Play is allowed only if it reinforces hierarchy. You may climb, but only after the king. Collective labor isn't about cleaning. It's about producing guilt and targets for punishment. Authority works by outsourcing cruelty downward, turning children into informants and rivals. Teacher Yan's real power isn't the bamboo switch, it's ideology. By labeling a child's gag reflex as bourgeois behavior, she converts biology into political guilt. Fear of the dining room becomes fear of thought itself. Li Lu's response, breaking the switch and hiding the fat, is not rebellion but calibration, resistance that stays just below detection. This is where he learns the core survival rule of the system. Never confront power directly, adapt quietly, and endure. This passage contrasts two kinds of authority and shows how one collapses the other. Back to the book. One day a new teacher came. Teacher Li was sent down to our school in punishment for some mistake she made at the Education Bureau. Our school was the sort of place where people would be sent for punishment. Li was very nice to us. She had studied education and child psychology. She wanted us to learn things, so she started a course in handicraft, where we made aeroplanes, rabbits, and other things with paper. She didn't teach us long, but she left a deep impression on me. She liked to sing. Before she came, we seldom sang. There was an old accordion in the kindergarten, which she used to teach us to sing, and we came up with all kinds of tunes. Poor Blockhead simply could not sing, yet he was very happy to join in with the others and sang the loudest. Teacher Yan would have hit Blockhead, but Teacher Li didn't even have a stick. She just looked over her glasses and smiled. She was very gentle with us. We laughed while we sang. At night, after the light was turned off, we weren't supposed to talk. Teacher Yan came to check on us, and we all pretended to be asleep. As soon as she left the room, a commotion would start. The most frightening one involved the lizards. They looked like fearsome little crocodiles and skittered rapidly across the floor. They were very poisonous. If they touched you, you would die, or at least your hand would fall off, we thought. When the teacher was gone, someone would shout, "Here comes the lizard!" Then everyone would scream and run around frantically to escape it. It was always Whiteface who led this, perhaps yelling, "The lizard has crawled into Blockhead's quilt." Others echoed the shout. Blockhead, frightened, would cry. When the teacher came and asked him who had shouted, he did not dare tell the truth. People who wanted to curry favor with Whiteface would say, "It was Li Lu who shouted." The teacher punished me by standing me by the door where it was cold. I said I didn't do it, but nobody would listen. If someone said it was you, then it was you. That was it. This was unjust. It was not such an awful punishment to stay alone in the big room at weekends, because that was my fate. But this was not my fault. I became angrier and angrier as I remembered all the things Whiteface had done to me, taking my cakes, cursing at me, ordering me about. He always made things my fault. As hatred filled my heart, a lizard once crawled across my feet. I could not move. The teacher would beat me. The children all shouted, "The lizard is crawling over Li Lu." I wanted to run and hide under my quilt, but I dared not. The teacher was coming. Transfixed, I watched the lizard crawl slowly over one foot, then the other. My feet seemed to swell with red and purple patches. I was cold and scared, but I was terrified about my feet. I could feel them swelling to an enormous size. They were totally numb, which was how the poison worked. When the teacher left, the room was deathly silent. Perhaps I frightened them, standing there like a dead crane with staring eyes, saying nothing. After a while, the teacher came back and told me to go back to bed. I was so numb she had to carry me. All night I dreamt about what I would look like the next day. The monsters and demons I saw in picture books all came back to haunt me. The lizard grew into a dragon, its huge claws and long tail dwarfing me, its jaws chewing my feet away. When I looked tremulously down at my feet in the morning, they did not look different. I examined them minutely. Nothing. They were the same. But why hadn't the lizard poisoned me? Maybe the lizards were secretly on my side. After all, I was the only one who kept them company at weekends, and I never joined in when others threw stones at them and then ran away. To test this idea that the lizard was my friend, I went to find lizards under the bricks. At first, I was a little afraid, but gradually I found the lizard did nothing to me. Once I put my hand out and let it crawl over it, I looked at my hand apprehensively for a day, but nothing happened to it. My courage grew. I was no longer afraid of lizards. Pause. This is the turning point. The collective belief of the group is that the lizard is fatal. Li Lu discovers, through accident and then experimentation, that the collective belief is a lie. This gives him asymmetric information. He knows something the powerful leader, Whiteface, does not. He realizes that fear is the primary tool of control, and if he is not afraid, the control breaks. This passage marks the collapse of fear as a governing force. Teacher Lee briefly proves that authority doesn't require cruelty, making the system's violence look gratuitous. The lizard episode then completes the lesson. Forced to endure what everyone knows is fatal, Li Lu survives and tests the belief for himself. Fear is exposed as a shared fiction, not a fact. Once he understands that terror, not truth, holds the hierarchy together, Whiteface's power is already broken. Back to the book. As the outcast, I suddenly felt that now I had friends who supported me. My whole outlook began to change. Before, I always tried to find ways to avoid offending the first official. He had power, he was strong and could fight, and had many supporters. When they joined together to bully me, I had felt bad and isolated. But now I had the lizards on my side. They were afraid of lizards. When they played the game of shouting that a lizard had crawled into someone's quilt, I felt relieved not to be afraid. When they played the lizard game on the weaker children, such as Blockhead, I felt sorry for him. The next day, I found he was all right. So the lizard had been listening to me when I willed it not to hurt Blockhead. Gradually, I grew in confidence. I was no longer afraid of lizards, or of the first official and his gang. I started to think that I should do something to fight them. I knew I couldn't win if I fought them alone since they outnumbered me. They weren't as powerful as they looked, though, for they constantly fought among themselves, each struggling to get above the others. But very few would challenge the first official. Once someone acquired that position, it was very hard to oust him, so he became very confident and despotic. Gradually, I realized that the most important thing was confidence. If you had confidence and believed you were right, you would feel stronger than others. I made up my mind that my friend the lizard would help me to punish the first official. I started to collect lizards. One day, I wrapped quite a few in my jacket and put them in Whiteface's quilt. I hid them under his pillow and waited for night to come. After supper, everyone stood in line to go to the bedroom. I walked slowly to Whiteface's bed. "The lizards have crawled into Whiteface's quilt," I shouted. Everyone was shocked. Up to now, only the first official or his lieutenants had started the lizard game. Nobody had even thought it possible that a lizard could ever crawl into the quilt of the first official. Then, Whiteface felt something crawling on him. He turned back the quilt and saw 7 or 8 lizards crawling in all directions. He screamed. Everyone tried to run out of the room. The first official started to cry. No one could believe that the first official could cry. The teacher came in and told us to go to bed. Then she asked who shouted first. Nobody said anything. The first official was dazed. He had not completely realized what had happened. No one dared to say anything. Who shouted first did not seem important now. What shocked them was that this time it was true, whereas before it was just a game. Lying in bed, I felt the lizards really were my friends. They had brought me revenge. Whiteface fell ill. His face grew even whiter. Others dared not say a word. At night, everyone looked carefully into their quilts. Since everyone was afraid, no one shouted. Only I could sleep well. Pause. Li Lu executes a psychological coup. He doesn't defeat the bully with strength, he defeats him by exposing his fear. The moment the king cries, his authority evaporates. This is a profound lesson in power dynamics. Authority often rests on the projection of invulnerability. Once that illusion is punctured, the power is gone. Back to the book. Several days later, they remembered that it was I who had shouted that day. I knew they would try to take revenge, so I was prepared. When a group came up to me in the playground, I went to the wall, pretending not to see them. I played with the lizards, letting them crawl over my feet, hands, and arms. When the other children saw this, they were amazed. Nothing could be more fearsome than these lizards, but the monsters were good to me. The second and third officials looked at me in awe. The first official, though, could not show fear. He swaggered over to me, clenching his fists, but I was prepared and hit him first, knocking him to the ground, which completely crushed his position as the number 1 leader. The second and third officials looked at each other, then left. That night, I went back to the dormitory as if nothing had happened, but the news had spread. Everyone looked at me entirely differently. I became a sort of god, an incarnation of the lizard, and was given the name Lizard. In our small society, I rose from the very bottom right to the top, yet I retained a deep sense of inferiority from my lack of contact with the outside world. When other children were talking about what they saw and heard on Saturday night and Sunday, I felt inferior. I had no way of acquiring information. I had no home, no one to take me out, no good food, no picture books, and nothing to offer round after the weekend. After I became the first official, I wanted to change the system. Whiteface had the most food, and picture books, he saw most movies, his family was the richest. As first official, he had had all the privileges. He cursed, kicked, and hit others whenever he liked. If he saw someone eating something better than he had, he would demand it. In the northeast corner of the small playground in front of the school, there was an elephant whose trunk was a slide, and whose legs were immense stone pillars, twice as high as your head. Every Sunday evening, we gathered under the belly of the elephant. The children came here to present offerings, such as sweets, to the first official. Then we began to tell stories, what we had done or heard, what movies they had seen, what picture books they had brought back. We would hand round the picture books while someone was telling a story his parents had told him as best he could remember it. Those who had seen the movie or read the book could follow each other's narrative. I had to ask detailed questions to understand a story, and often interrupted the storyteller, who would try to make the story clearer. Most found it hard to answer my questions because they had not been paying close attention, but said that they would see the movie or read the book again more carefully. I could imagine the stories they were telling. I developed a keen sense of imitation, narration, and imagination. I had a great thirst for knowledge. These Sunday evenings thus evolved from boasting sessions into storytelling meetings and discussions. I would sum up what was useful to us, stories we could act out later on. After we talked about a war film, what interested us most was how to act it out ourselves. How the Liberation Army won the war, how they fought the American imperialists, how the story developed, what stronghold there was, what people there were, and so forth. I would divide the children up and assign roles. One side would be People's Liberation Army soldiers, which I always led. The second or third official would lead the American imperialists. Pause. Once in power, Lilu changes the currency of the playground. Instead of hoarding food, which he doesn't have, he hoards information and stories. He becomes a leader not through brute force, but by organizing the group and giving them a narrative to play out. He mimics the only stories available to him. The war movies of the People's Liberation Army fighting the imperialists. This is a clean regime change. Lilu topples the king not by out-muscling him, but by exposing fear and striking first, collapsing the myth of invulnerability. But the real shift comes after. He doesn't rule through terror or hoarding because he lacks material power. Instead, he changes the currency of status from goods to information and narrative. Stories replace offerings. Attention replaces violence. By organizing, questioning, and reenacting stories, he turns leadership into coordination rather than domination. It's his first demonstration that power can be built from cognition, not possession. Back to the book. Our schoolyard was surrounded by a high wall too high to see or climb over. Not even treetops were visible over it, except in the back corner where the wall crumbled and curved into the yard beyond, which tossed the tresses of a weeping willow tree. We were not allowed to go there, but after I became friends with the lizards, my courage grew. My inquisitiveness and imagination, which came from my shut-up life, focused on that intriguing, crumbling wall. Perhaps it would be my route to the outside world I had never seen. After I became first official, I once told the third official to ask whoever came to take him home to unlock an outside bolt of the window. I went out through the window into the backyard. Although it was bigger than the dormitory, it was still small. The walls were so high that I could not see what the outside looked like. The crumbling segment, however, was lower. It took me several weekends to move stones over to the wall. I piled them up until one day the pile was high enough for me to climb over. On the other side of the wall, I was amazed to see ruins, a mound of rubble that retained some semblance to a terrace surrounded by walls on all sides. I dropped to the ground and started to explore. I stayed in there all day, very excited. I ran about, sat on a branch of the willow, protected from the summer sun. I examined the ruins, climbed in the tree, dug in the dirt, and did all kinds of things. When dusk arrived, I was up in the tree and could see the sun fall into the far end of the field beyond the second wall, a huge balloon falling downward, slowly and solemnly. The feeling was wonderful. I was intoxicated with love for nature. The lizards were crawling around. I had friends everywhere. Pause. This moment of solitude is critical. For a child raised in a collective, watched by teachers and other children 24/7, being alone is a radical act. He finds a secret world, the ruins, where he can be himself. This is his first act of true escape, not from people but from surveillance. The wall isn't just physical, it's the limit of what he's allowed to know. Becoming first official gives him access, but he uses that power not to dominate others, only to create a blind spot for himself. Moving stones over multiple weekends is quiet, patient rebellion, not impulse. On the other side, he doesn't find freedom as spectacle, but as solitude. Dirt, trees, light, silence. For the first time, no hierarchy is watching him perform. The ruins become a private territory where curiosity replaces fear and loneliness turns into choice. Back to the book. Suddenly, I noticed how dark it was getting. I realized I should go back, but I could not find a place to get back in. The walls were crumbling but very tall, impossible for me to climb over. I could not think of getting out by any other way than the way I had come in, but I could not get over the wall. It was getting darker. Though it was summer, it was very cold at night. I started to feel scared. The sense of loneliness grew stronger. The vague shapes of the ruins became frightening. The insect noises sounded strange and threatening. Afraid and confused, I lay on a stone tablet and soon fell asleep. I woke up blinded by the sun. It was Sunday. In the daytime, I was less afraid. I felt as if I had conquered something. I did not want to go back. I lay on the willow branch, thinking and dreaming and throwing stones. Then I saw that one part of the wall was lower than the rest. I piled up stones, climbed over the wall and into the fields beyond. I walked back and forth in the fields. Eventually, I came to the front gate of the kindergarten, which was open for the parents to bring back the children on Sunday afternoon. I sneaked stealthily through the gate. No one saw me or cared about me. Nobody knew what happened. In the evening, everyone came back. They talked about what they did at the weekend. Suddenly, I felt that everything they said was so dull. What I had experienced was a great secret. My experiences in the ruins were different from everyone else's life. It was a bridge that led me to another world, another kind of life. From that time on, I went outside every Saturday and Sunday. I never told anyone about my adventures. The secret place belonged to me alone. Until I left the kindergarten, it was always a source of private happiness. It was a place where I could cherish my loneliness. There I could see it not as something that made me inferior, but as my treasure. When I was about 6, something happened. It was a Saturday when I saw what appeared to be the disc of a sunflower on the willow branch. It was black with lots of holes in it. I didn't know exactly what it was, but it looked fun to play with. I needed a stick to get it down. It was like digging at a bird's nest as it came loose. I hit it and it fell on the ground with a thud. Thousands of hornets flew out of it. I didn't know anything about hornets, and I was dumbfounded when they whined around me. Some stung my face. It hurt, and I started to hit out at them with my stick. The more I hit at them, the more they stung. Thousands of hornets flew around me and would not leave. Big lumps swelled all over me. The more violently the hornets attacked me, the stronger my will to fight them. Swiping at the hornets with the stick, I felt like a hero in the People's Liberation Army fighting American imperialists. But I couldn't hit even one of them. I was stung so seriously that I couldn't open my eyes or mouth. I was losing strength and finally I fainted. He made the mistake of assuming the hornets were like the lizards, something fearsome that was actually harmless. Fear is not real. Danger is very real. He applied the wrong mental model. This is the final lesson of his kindergarten years. Courage is necessary, but the world is still dangerous, and not every monster is a friend in disguise. This passage completes the arc from discovery to overconfidence. Being trapped overnight teaches him that fear can be endured and solitude mastered. Escaping by daylight reinforces the belief that patience and observation will always reveal a way out. The ruins become his private proof that loneliness can be power. The hornets shatter that illusion. He applies the lizard lesson too broadly, assuming all threats dissolve under courage and familiarity. They don't. This is the corrective. Insight beats fear, but reality still has sharp edges. Survival requires not just bravery and curiosity, but knowing when a model no longer fits the world. This is Avi. Like and subscribe. On to the next.